Hello and welcome to the Bucket Lister podcast. Join your host Keith Crockford along with special guests who have travelled the world, here to share stories of their adventures and plenty of inspo to add to your bucket list. Now, let's get into today's episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Bucket Lister podcast. I am your host, Keith Crockford, and today I am back chatting. We haven't had him on for a while, but I'm back chatting with Dave. Hello, Dave.
Hi, Keith. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And you? Feeling better now?
Yeah, I'm absolutely fine, thank you.
Perfect. What we thought we were going to discuss today is we thought we'd talk about Jordan and is Jordan safe? And Dave's just come back from a trip to Jordan. And obviously, with everything that's happening with Israel at the minute and Jordan bordering Israel, we've had quite a lot of questions come into the office about, is it safe to travel to Jordan? Now, as a company, obviously, what we have to do is follow the Foreign Office guidelines. And, we are constantly checking the FCO for updates on all of the destinations that we visit. And to be honest, when it all first started kicking off with Israel and Palestine, etc., I was surprised in the first instance that Jordan wasn't affected with how close it actually is. I mean, I was in Israel at the start of this year in February time. And, as you're driving down through Israel, you literally look across and you see Jordan pretty much the whole time you're on your way down. So I was quite surprised. But, the Foreign Office had said that Jordan was safe to go. Jordan Tourist Office, obviously, as they would do, was saying we are open. It's still a safe destination to go to. And, as a company, we follow what the Foreign Office advise us to do. And this also causes us complications as well with flights, etc., because, airlines will say, well, if it's safe to go and the Foreign Office is saying it's safe to go, then we will still be flying. So we took the decision last month to continue with our trip to Jordan based on what we were being told was happening in Jordan by our guys on the ground there, and also by what the Jordanian Tourism Office were telling us, and then more importantly, what the Foreign Office were telling us. So we decided to go ahead with it. And Dave, we thought we'd send you anyway. Check it out for us. But was Jordan safe? Was it any different to any of the other times you've been there?
Keith, I can assure you and the listeners, it was exactly like it was the year before when we went. We have done a podcast on this and about Jordan generally, so I don't want to go over all the detail, but I'm going to say a couple of things from my own. I'm an old boy now, I've done a lot of traveling. Jordan is one of the friendliest Arabic countries I have ever been to. It was last year and it continues to be so. So that's the first thing I want to say from my own personal perspective. The main city, Amman, we stay in a hotel in downtown Amman. As a group and individually, we walked the streets buying things, obviously, and looking around. And a couple went off. They wanted to go to Rainbow Street. And all you ever meet is people either going about their business, or if you want to ask a question, they understand English, they just want to help. So, and Amman, just apart from the traffic, it feels absolutely safe. Safer than London, I would say, even at its busiest, because people they're not just there wandering about. They're working, or they've got a shop. They're glad to see you. They like tourists. We went to all the tourist attractions there, the Citadel, the beautiful amphitheatre, and so forth. And it was just the same. There aren't a million tourists there, definitely not. You can wander around. none of us were ever accosted, not males, not females at all. So that, it's felt as safe as anything. Now, what we've got to bear in mind is we travelled from the north, from Amman, right down to the south. And you're right. In the west, you can see Israel because you're looking over the River Jordan. You look over the Dead Sea at times, and you can see Jericho. You can see Jerusalem. But of course, that's the eastern side of Israel. The problems that are going on are completely on the western side of Israel, and obviously the narrow Gaza Strip. We didn't see any military presence anywhere at all. The police presence was as before, just at major junctions where they check traffic, just like they do in Morocco and other countries. It was absolutely lovely, actually. It was lovely. And of course, part of this is that we are either trekking through remote areas where there isn't much, if you like, civilization, down to the Dana Biosphere Reserve, down the Wadi, which is absolutely fantastic. Staying at an eco hotel in the middle of the desert. Again, it's remote, and it's only you there, really, and the staff who look after you and your guide. We carry on right down, and the nearest we get to Israel is Aqaba, where we take people snorkeling in the Red Sea. And again, as it happens this time, the sea was too rough, so we went to a private beach and people swam in the Red Sea with the fish instead. But again, absolutely calm. I'm not trying to sell it. Peaceful, most relaxing trip. It's the most relaxing trip. I won't call it a trek. I do. It's so varied and just so calm and so friendly. I don't know if I can say any more, really.
And I suppose, like you say, down there, literally, you can, when you're down on the coast, the Israeli border is right there. You can literally
Eilat is right. You drive right past it. But again, there are, as there were last year, there are security points, if you like, but that's to do with the border. It's not to do with the heightened terrorist issues or fighting or whatever. It's just the same as the previous year. And I also want, if you come back to the Foreign Office advice that you mentioned, what's the same on the Foreign Office advice as it was last year, and when I looked at the year before when we were planning to do this, is on a Thursday or Friday after prayers, sometimes groups of people want to demonstrate, but it's not about Palestine necessarily. It's about all sorts of issues within the country, and they do that, and it passes off. The other thing is, I'm not a big monarchist, but that country, the king and queen there, they appear to be very, very well respected. There's no people aren't persecuted. They just say what they feel about them. The queen herself does lots and lots of work to enable women to have professions or to have crafts or jobs so they can actually earn. And I think that's actually tempered the whole climate in the country, because it isn't, as I felt in some other Arabic countries, it isn't male dominated. It's just a very calm place generally.
And going back to the FCO advice as well, in terms of, if you go and read any country's advice from the FCO, there's always something on there. Like if you read London's advice and the UK's advice, it will say, there are often terrorist attacks. There are often things like this.
Yeah. Or beware pickpockets or something.
Yeah. And I suppose, obviously Jordan is current, there's obviously the issues in Israel at the minute, but also Jordan borders Iran, it borders Syria. And, there's been a warning on the FCO about not going within 3 kilometers of the Syrian border. That's been on the page for years and years and years. And obviously we go nowhere within 3 kilometers of the Syrian border anyway when we plan our trip. But I think, there's not that the advice is there to scare people, but it's there to give you a true picture of what the current situation is. And I think if there was any issues that they felt was going to be a problem with Israel, they would close that down.
They would. And, you make the point, again, at the beginning of this podcast, is you make the point that we always, as a company, we check. But also, while we are there, I know you are checking, and I check every day. If at a place that is, that there might be a worry about, we check every day. And the advice just didn't change. And if it were, let's say it were to change, we're in a country, not so Jordan, and it were to change, given we've got the alerts set up on our phone, we'd know straight away, and then we'd be saying, right, what do we need to do about it? And planning, you'd be planning, I'll be planning, and between us, things will move, So,
yeah, and I mean,
honestly, I think the safety net is there around it anyway, but also the on-the-ground experience is there is no problem. I want to say one more thing too. The king, just before we got there, actually hosted trying to get peace conference with the Israelis and the Palestinians and called the conference. So, Jordan itself is trying to be a peacemaker, not someone part of the conflict, trying to see it sort of equally as possible. And I'm going to say one last thing too. Often, because we travel a lot, the local guide will give you the temperature of a country, won't they? Always, they'll tell you what's going on and whatever. Well, I can say we had absolutely no outpouring of anger or aggression from the guide about the situation that's going on in the far west, Israel, Palestine. Absolutely very professional about it, and basically saying it's a terrible thing. It's a very terrible thing, but what can we do about it as a nation? What can we do? Our king is doing what he can do, and that's as far as it went. So it's not even feeling itself inflamed by the situation. It's like all the rest of us. The people are thinking it's a dreadful thing. What can we do to stop it?
Yeah, and I think it's like with anything, isn't it? I mean, obviously we had the earthquake in Morocco a few months ago. Morocco, I think, is quite a rich country in terms of they sorted things out very, very quickly. Yes, they needed some support very quickly for, temporary accommodation and things like that. But ultimately, we did a podcast on it the other day with Jake, or was it a podcast, or it might have been a Facebook Live I did with Jake, where he was saying, it's back to normal in Morocco now. And I suppose Jordan's pretty much the same as that in terms of it is quite a wealthy nation. It is locked amongst many countries. And I think you're right. I think Jordan is a peacemaking country in terms of, like, it's not out there to fight with anyone. It's not going to get involved. It's a very small territory in terms of, they're going to keep their noses out of most stuff, aren't they? They're not going to want to get themselves involved.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you totally. And again, you're walking around. I'm just thinking about the Amman bit, which is only a couple of days actually, but the Amman experience, you see, there are not many tourists ever, but you see all tourists, and some of them you might think, oh, that person looked like they might be Israeli, but then nobody's persecuting them or saying or jumping on the bandwagon and saying, who are you, where you're from, or what are you doing? It's just not that kind of country at all. Like I say, it's one of the friendliest Arabic countries I've ever been to. But that's why I was so pleased to go back this year, to be honest. Apart from the fact I needed to see Petra again.
And even after, like the Morocco earthquake, the FCO was still saying it is safe to go to Morocco. And we kind of got stung a little bit on that because the FCO was saying it's safe to go. We had a Toubkal trip planned about 10 days after the earthquake, but they hadn't opened the Toubkal National Park. So obviously we couldn't go and run the trip we had planned, but because the FCO was saying it is safe to go, the airline were going, well, our flights are still operating. it's up to you whether you decide to get on them or not. You're not having a refund. You're not doing any. So it really was, for a couple of weeks, quite tense because we had Toopcow trips going out, which we couldn't operate, but the airlines weren't prepared to move our flights because we couldn't run the trip that we wanted. So obviously we will follow FCO advice, but sometimes the FCO advice also causes us problems as well in terms of the airlines, but that's just part and parcel of the travel, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is.
So I think as well, like Morocco wanted people to go back. They needed the tourism, and I think what I want to highlight on this, very short podcast today, is that actually Jordan needs tourism as well, doesn't it?
It does. It does, and there were definitely fewer tourists than this time last year because people have had anxieties, obviously, and that's up to them. Excuse me, what they do about that. But the sort of standard greeting you get is "Welcome to Jordan." And I'll tell you one more thing. I'm a great lover of coffee, and Turkish coffee in particular with the cardamom, and it's lovely. And they make it they make it in Jordan. It's absolutely gorgeous. Anyway, asking for Turkish coffee, and one of the guys I asked for it, and he said, "No, we don't have Turkish coffee. We have Jordanian coffee, and you are welcome to try it." So that's kind of extra. That's just some guy in a cafe. It's not a paid tourist representative. It's just some guy in a cafe, kind of making pulling you into it all. And I think it's great.
And what in your professional opinion as a great coffee drinker, how was the Jordanian coffee compared to the Turkish coffee?
Wow, Keith. Oh, it's hard. It's hard. It's made in exactly the same way, very finely ground, and it's boiled in that little brass pot. And they put cardamom in it, and I bought some cardamom back to go in the Turkish coffee you got for me. It's just nobody else I know likes it, but if you really like coffee, you can't help but love Jordanian / Turkish coffee. It's just fabulous. I think.
And how's your supply of Turkish coffee going? Do I need to go back to Turkey soon, or
because I've been away? It's in I vacuum sealed it, so because I've been away, it's not going very quickly. But now I'm back. It won't last till Christmas. I can tell you that.
So,
very good.
I think from the sound of it, Dave, you're saying if you are planning to go to Jordan, then still keep planning to go to Jordan.
Yeah, definitely. And safety apart, the things that you will see, learn about, and experience, it's a great trip. It's a great trip. And I'm not even on commission. It's a great trip.
Well, thank you ever so much. I think we do pack a lot into that trip, I think. And obviously we've not gone into too much information today about the Jordan trip. I'll put a link into the show notes with the previous podcast I did with Dave, where we went into a lot more detail on the trip, and you can have a listen to that one as well if Jordan is of interest. But I think it's such an amazing country, and interestingly, and obviously, like I said at the start of this podcast, I went to Israel in February this year. I got invited by the Israeli Tourist Board to go and have a tour of Israel, to look at putting a trip on there. And I did, and I found myself, obviously this was well before any of this happened and whatever, Israel was a very nice country. But I just kept finding myself as I was going through Israel saying, it's nice, but just over there in Jordan, it's better. And I kind of came to the conclusion that we would be adding nothing to our portfolio of trips by adding an Israel trip compared to what we've already got in Jordan. And the only thing that I came up with was not the only point to go to Israel, but if you are a religious person and you're interested in the Jerusalem, the Bethlehem, the story, all of that, then of course, yes, you are going to want to go and see that in Israel. Obviously, that doesn't really tick the box for us as adventure travel, and there are plenty of travel companies out there that do those sorts of tours. So I made the decision that we wouldn't be offering an Israel trip, because for me, I felt what we had in Jordan was a better product that was just amazing, and we couldn't beat that. So we would just stick with Jordan. So obviously you can't go to Israel at the minute anyway, but if you do want to go for the religious reasons, then do go and see it. It is amazing. If you are going to want to go from an adventure travel perspective, then I would say go to Jordan and do a tour around Jordan. And I suppose, it comes back to the other thing, Dave, of, when booking with a company, if something was to happen or something did need to change, it could be changed very quickly, and you would know about it very quickly as well, I suppose.
Yeah. We're on it. We're on it, wherever we go, particularly if a place, feels a bit, like I say, people are worried about it. We just have alerts coming through all the time. And, you and I, I've phoned you at 2 a.m. because I've been in a different time zone completely, just to check out something. So we're absolutely clear what we're going to be doing. And that's how we operate, of course.
Well, Dave, thanks for coming on today and giving us that brief outlook on Jordan and is it safe? And obviously the conclusion from this last 20 minutes is please do keep going to Jordan. It is safe. There is no difference to what it was last year or the year before. So don't use that as an excuse not to go and do your trip to this amazing country. Dave, thanks again. We'll have you back on in a few weeks' time. We're getting quite close to our 2023 wrap up of our bucket list year. And hopefully we'll find out what your favorite trips were from this year and any funny stories you've got. So as soon as Jake gets back from Thailand, we'll get us together and we will get a podcast done with our 2023 review of the year. So we'll look forward to hearing from you then again.
Thank you very much.
Well, everyone, thanks ever so much for listening today. Hope you enjoyed this episode and it gave you some information. I'll be back again for another episode next week. But if you have got 2 seconds, if you could just go and give this podcast a review, it really does help us. Just click the 5-star button, tell how great it is. And then that does help us move up the rankings. So if you could quickly do that for me, that would be amazing. Obviously, I haven't done a podcast since last week when we again won the British Travel Award for the best adventure travel company, which is the second year we've won it on the trot. So that's amazing news. I'd like my podcast to be just as good as well. So if you could go and give it that 5-star review, that would be amazing. But until next week, I'll speak to you then. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Bucket Lister podcast. Be sure to click follow to be alerted for next week's episode. For more travel inspiration, check us out at www.thebucketlistcompany.co.uk or follow us on socials. See you next time.